Hello and welcome to the party. Thank God it's Friday, TGIF, and this is the Peace Party. Fridays are our open day or open forum where we just talk about anything. We riff a little bit, and we also reminisce a little bit on what took place this past week. To get things started right away, we're going to do something different, something we didn't discuss this past week, and that's the issue of recycling. We live here in the state of Illinois, and unfortunately the state of Illinois does not do a very good job when it comes to recycling, especially compared to our neighbor, Michigan. And we would like to see the state of Illinois get to that level. State of Michigan bases their recycling a bit more on the capitalist model, where when 20 years ago I was living in Amsterdam, their system of recycling is all based on community, altruism, and the sense of responsibility. Well, either way, recycling is a good thing. And unfortunately here in the Chicago or in the state of Illinois, we don't do a very good job. And so we would like to see the state of Illinois move to the Michigan model, simply because it seems that Americans do much better when there's an incentive. And one of the things that we are so wired to do here in the United States is respond to money. Any kind of a monetary reward sort of spurs us on and into action. And so we're thinking that that would be the best thing to do, is to follow the Michigan model. And for every item that you recycle, you get a little bit of money back. Seems to make sense. And so that's one of the things that we are proposing, with the idea of looking toward the future like we always want to do, and looking at a situation and not just complain about it, but come up with a solution that is concrete and can be accepted. And this is one of those that's pretty simple. Give me a little bit of money, I'll give you this 2-liter empty plastic bottle, and we'll call it a day. Seems so simple. So with that in mind, we're going to move on, because you could talk about that forever, but it's pretty simple. It's our proposal, and, we'd love to see what you have to say. And again, when we meet in September, this will be one of those things that'll be up there for finalization. And we as a people, as a group, as an organization, as a party, will have decided how we want to go. If we want to use the Michigan model, if we want to use the European model, we want to come up with our own model. But we have plenty of time to discuss it. And we'll see what happens. We also wanted to, though, revisit Wednesday, because we were talking about criminal justice and law enforcement reform. And one of the things that we had neglected, in talking about how Europe had learned from World War II, we neglected to really get into the heart of why we have the problem here in the United States, and that's our own history. And we have to accept our own history in order to get to the root of the problem and actually really solve it. So let's be straight. The United States has 2 major sins that we have to still answer for, and certainly not sweep under the rug like so many people today want to do. First is how we treated all of the people who were living here before Europeans first showed up. Between stealing land, murder, rape, dislocation, cultural and linguistic genocide, there was pretty much nothing. When you think about it, there's probably no crime that the U.S. government did not commit when it comes to the Native Americans, the people who were living here, the indigenous population that was here for centuries before anyone from Europe knew that this area, these continents existed. And then, of course, we know the second sin was the kidnapping and illegal deporting and taking people and moving them from one continent to another in order to enslave them. And so that is the second of the sins that the United States still is wrestling with, and law enforcement is so wrapped up in the second of our sins that to not address it is to be wrong. And so we wanted to revisit Wednesday and make it clear that so much of what is our problem here in the United States is when it comes to law enforcement has to do with the history of slavery. And the idea that law enforcement was originally created here in the United States to uphold slave laws. And that's an issue. And why, when you look at the 21st century, law enforcement and criminal justice reform is so necessary, because if we're still rooted in the idea of 16th, 17th, and 18th century thought and the idea that slavery is a good thing, our laws today are going to be flawed. And everything about how law enforcement, whether it be the best police officer or the worst police officer, if the laws are flawed, it's going to affect their behavior. It's going to affect the outcome. And so we look at this and say, we must address the past and not be afraid of it. So many people today are afraid of the past. The past is just that. It's the past. Don't be afraid of it. Embrace it, learn from it, and let's move on. How do we do that? Well, again, it's by taking a look at every aspect of law enforcement and criminal justice reform and review it and rewrite it with the idea that we are no longer using law enforcement to uphold an archaic law, that law of slavery. In that everything that we do now with law enforcement has to be done with the idea of complete and total justice for all and no bias. That's not where we are today. And these things need to be put in writing, because that's the whole point of the social contract, is that you need to put it in writing. You can't just talk about it. That is a conversation where the social contract is a contract, and contracts typically are in writing. Any oral agreement, anybody who's ever gotten themselves involved in an oral agreement knows that there's always going to be an issue. And each person's going to have a different opinion as to what that agreement meant in the first place, says today, and will mean tomorrow. So it needs to be in writing. And so when we look at the social contract, we understand that when we do the 17, 18, 19, 20 points of how to deal with criminal justice and law enforcement reform, each section is going to have to be very particular and specific in regards to the issues that we're addressing and where these problems came from in the first place. How did we get here in the first place? Because one of the issues, for example, is going to be talking about the transporting someone that you have handcuffed from one place to the other. You wouldn't think that you would have to have a whole section on something like that. But because of the history of the United States and how we perceive certain individuals and how we like to label them now, especially when we see what's happening in this moment here in the United States in 2025, we are all about the label right now, and the label can be very, very dangerous because it leads to all of the wrong conclusions. And again, if you don't have it in writing, abuse will occur. And we're seeing abuses occur right now because nobody ever thought to put some of these issues in writing, because nobody ever thought we would be here. Can't blame anybody for that, because we are living in extraordinary times, and you can't always think ahead, no matter how smart we want to be and how smart we wish everybody in the past had been. No, we're all human, And this is something that's just going to keep evolving, and we're going to keep learning, and we're going to keep working at it. And so we accept that. We accept that this is going to be something we're going to have to work at. And we wanted to acknowledge the fact that on Wednesday, there was an omission. We didn't do it on purpose. We were trying to get to a point, and in the same time, missed the point. So today we hope that we were able to put it all together and clarify where we stand in knowing that the history here in the United States is far more complicated and rich than just looking at things and saying, well, we should be more like the Europeans that were after World War II. Because, we're not Europe, and our history is so different. Mostly as a result of our own sins and our own fault. But, we can always go forward, and that is the point of the Peace Party, is going forward, and at the same time making friends and enjoying ourselves as we go forward. So we're going to leave it at that today, but we need to always ask that one question, because that's how we always end things, because we always want to have you think, and we still don't have an answer. So we're going to go back to the same question. What is a reasonable profit for a landlord to make on a rental unit that costs a total of $1,000 a month to operate? Looking for your answer. But thank you much, and have a great day. We'll talk to you soon.